Sit back and enjoy an hour of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started. A chimichanga is a dish made with a fried flour tortilla filled with ingredients. It is like a fried burrito. There are two restaurants in the United States that claim its creation. However, the origin of the word and the dish is believed to come from the early 20th century, when Chinese immigrants in Sonora made chun-kung using Sonora-style flour tortillas. The banister effect is a phenomenon that occurs when someone achieves something previously thought impossible, and afterward, many people also manage to do it, being considered mostly a mental barrier. An example of this was when Tony Hawk accomplished the 900 trick in skateboarding, which was called the impossible trick. Since then, more than 10 people have achieved it, including a 7-year-old child. Cats are not actually nocturnal or diurnal, but crepuscular. This means they are most active during dawn and dusk. This evolutionary adaptation allows them to hunt when their prey is most active and the light is dim, taking advantage of their excellent low-light vision. The Cave of the Crystals in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico, has the largest crystals in the world, which can measure up to 36 feet and weigh around 60 tons. It was discovered in the year 2000. The extreme conditions inside the cave, with temperatures reaching up to 136 degrees Fahrenheit and more than 90% humidity, make it practically uninhabitable for humans without special equipment. The reason why photos from past decades in indoor sports events have a blue tint and thick haze is because people were allowed to smoke in closed stadiums, which caused the smoke to accumulate and become visible in the lighting. Lifeboat number 1 of the Titanic, which had the capacity to carry more than 40 people, was lowered into the sea with only 12 passengers, mostly first class, when the ship was sinking. Later, they refused to return to look for survivors. This was one of the 20 lifeboats the ship carried, which, even full, would not have been enough to save everyone. The pygmy hippopotamus named Mud Dang, born in July of 2024, and who went viral on the internet because of her appearance, will reach up to 600 pounds. This species of hippopotamus is endangered, with fewer than 2,000 living in the wild. The zoo where Mud Dang lives in Thailand has doubled its daily visitors in recent months. According to research, the clearest lakes can be the most polluted. This is because acid removal, such as acid rain, eliminates plankton and microorganisms that give water its color, and lakes can end up without living organisms. However, there are also lakes that are naturally this clear. At the Christmas party of the Milan City Council in Italy in 2013, Roberto Casago, one of the officials, opened a bottle of sparkling wine and the cork flew out and made a hole in a 17th century painting hanging there. When experts arrived to examine the damage, someone had tried to fix it with adhesive tape. History tells that ice cream cones were used for the first time at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904 by an ice cream vendor who ran out of cups and decided to use crispy sweets called zalabia, similar to a rolled waffle, which were being sold at the stand next to him. However, in reality, there are patent records prior to that year for creating ice cream cones, so it was not the first time the idea existed. In Coria del Rio, Seville, Spain, more than 600 people have the surname Japón. This unusual surname originates from 1614, when the samurai Hasekura Tsunenaga arrived in Spain on a diplomatic mission. Some members of his expedition stayed, and in the mid-17th century, the first baptism with this surname, referencing their country of origin, was recorded. There's an underground pipeline system in the United Kingdom connecting different cities. It was built during World War II to safely transport aviation fuel throughout the country, avoiding the risks of moving it by road and rail. Today, it's mainly used to supply commercial aviation. It is believed that humans see the colors we see because they are the part of the light spectrum that can pass through water, which is where eyes first evolved. And in our evolutionary path, there was no reason or need to expand this spectrum, something that did happen with many other species. Say estimates that the Beatles played together for more than 2,000 hours when they performed their shows in Hamburg, Germany. This was before they obtained their first recording contract. At their most active period, they played up to 46 hours per week. And according to estimates, before their arrival in the United States, which marked the beginning of their worldwide fame, they had already accumulated at least 10,000 hours of practice. When the Kız Kulesi Tower, or Maiden's Tower, in Istanbul, Turkey, which is more than 2,000 years old, was restored, it became the subject of jokes on social media due to its resemblance to SpongeBob or Bart Simpson. It is at least the third time it has been repaired in its history, previously by the Byzantines and the Ottomans. The largest mammal migration in the world is composed of bats. Around 100 million fruit bats, which are roughly the size of a domestic cat, migrate to Kasanka National Park in Zambia, where they arrive to feed on the abundant fruit available. These bats play an important role in pollination and seed dispersion across the region. Ford Model T cars were initially available in various colors between 1908 and 1913, including red, blue, green, and gray. However, starting in 1914, Henry Ford decided to produce them exclusively in black to optimize production and reduce costs, since black paint dried the fastest. The Ford T was the first car produced in a factory using the assembly line system. Internet users discovered that the floor of the hospital appearing in episode 12 of the fourth season of Breaking Bad has a pattern that seems to reference the show's logo, the two green squares that represent elements from the periodic table. However, the showrunner, Vince Gilligan, mentioned in the Blu-ray commentary track that this was only a coincidence. That floor had been there long before. For years, many internet posts claimed that Oasis lead singer Liam Gallagher had been photographed by Google Street View in a London bar. However, in March of 2024, Liam himself responded with a tweet saying that it was not him, since he never wears shorts with sneakers and socks. Cars can travel at any speed on the Autobahn, the German highway system. However, a speed of approximately 80 miles per hour is recommended. If an accident occurs in which someone was driving at a higher speed and the accident could have been avoided by driving slower, that driver is automatically blamed. The bellbird is the loudest bird in the world. It lives in South America, and despite its small size, its call can reach up to 125 decibels, which is close to the pain threshold for the human ear. In addition, it's a very peculiar sound, very artificial sounding, similar to an alarm. There is only one university in Greenland, located in the capital Nuuk, where there are around 200 students and fewer than 20 workers, including teachers and maintenance staff. This low number is due to the fact that most Greenlandic students attend university in Denmark with a full government scholarship. Everglades National Park in Florida, United States, is the only place in the world where crocodiles and alligators naturally coexist. This unique ecosystem, considered the only subtropical wilderness area in North America, contains both species. Alligators have a U-shaped snout, and crocodiles have a V-shaped snout, and in general, crocodiles are larger. The astronaut from the Apollo 12 mission, Alan Bean, accidentally destroyed the television camera they carried when he pointed it directly at the sun, left rolls of film on the moon by mistake, and when they returned to Earth, during landing, a 16mm film camera that was not secured hit him on the head. He mentioned all of this himself in a documentary in 1996. In Sweden and Finland, girls celebrate Easter by dressing as witches and going door to door asking for candy. Similar to Halloween, this tradition dates back to the witch trials of the 17th century. when it was believed they flew during those days and people stayed inside their homes for protection. The explorer Michel Siffre conducted an experiment in which he lived completely isolated 427 feet underground for 2 months with no sense of time, and discovered that his biological clock shifted to 48-hour cycles of sleeping and waking instead of 24. NASA considered the conclusions of these experiments for the Apollo space missions. There has always been a belief that garlic can repel vampires according to legends, but the true reason is not known. One theory says that since vampirism was believed to be a disease, it could be cured with the antibiotic properties of garlic, while others think that since garlic repels mosquitoes, it could also repel vampires, since both feed on blood. It is not recommended to bathe during a thunderstorm because the electrical discharge can travel through the pipes and water if lightning strikes the house or building. The risk is greater if the plumbing system is made of metal. In total, around 15 million Ford T automobiles were produced, of which, more than a century after production ended, an estimated 60,000 remain in drivable condition. BMW built a prototype car that could change shape. Its movable structure was controlled by motors that stretched a spandex fabric covering, which could be manipulated by the driver or automatically depending on conditions such as speed. But it remained only a prototype. In 2021, a 90-year-old man spent $10,000 to place an ad in the Wall Street Journal, addressed to the president of AT&T, complaining about the internet service, saying it was too slow. When Yahoo began in 1994, it was called Jerry and David's Guide to the Internet and was only a web page with a list of links to websites organized by categories. Only 6 years later, Yahoo briefly became the most valuable company in the world when its shares reached a price of $475. The first experts in computer animation had to possess knowledge in different areas, because besides knowing about animation, they had to develop new algorithms and techniques to create even the simplest animations, since the necessary tools we use today did not yet exist. The first functional sewing machine that imitated hand stitching was invented in France in 1830 by a tailor named Barthélemy Thimonier. When other local tailors found out, they burned down the factory for fear the machine would take away their jobs. But that did not stop the invention from becoming popular. Adventurers climbed the Ojos del Salado volcano in Chile using Jeep Wrangler trucks and set a record for the highest altitude reached by a vehicle, 21,866 feet. To celebrate, they placed a sign that read, "Parking for Jeep only." Shortly after, other adventurers surpassed that record by 656 feet, using a Suzuki Samurai, and removed the sign. In less than 70 million years, Mars's moon Phobos will get so close to the surface of the red planet that it will be destroyed by tidal forces, giving Mars a ring similar to those of other planets like Saturn. The first television remote controls worked with a hammer powered by a spring that struck a solid aluminum rod inside the device, which emitted a sound at an ultrasonic frequency that was picked up by the television. This allowed them to function without batteries, and each button emitted a different tone for different functions. The oldest public housing complex in the world is still in use. It is located in Germany and maintains an annual rent of only 0.88 euros or its equivalent since 1516. As requirements, residents must be Catholic, have lived in Augsburg for at least 2 years, and pray daily for the owners. The doors close at 10 post-meridium, and each apartment has a unique doorbell to identify it in the dark. Geladas, the only primates that feed on grass, are also among the few herbivorous animals that have binocular vision, meaning their eyes point forward, a characteristic more typical of predators. Most herbivores have monocular peripheral vision. Their eyes are located on the sides of the skull. There are ships that transport other ships, such as the yacht's Servant, almost 700 feet long, which was specifically designed to carry luxury yachts. This marine giant can transport up to 36 superyachts at once. To load them, it partially submerges its hull, allowing the yachts to float directly on top of it before lifting them. Less than 4% of Earth's land has an antipode, meaning land located directly on the opposite side of the planet. There are very few places where you could hypothetically dig a 7,919-mile hole that would take you to the other side. There is a theory that cats dislike tap water because they detect all the chemicals in it with their highly sensitive noses, preferring natural water from rivers, lakes, or the sea. However, not everyone accepts this theory, since there may be other reasons related to their evolution. Hydrangeas change color depending on the pH of the soil in which they grow, acting as natural acidity indicators. In acidic soils with a pH below 5, the flowers turn blue, while in alkaline soils with a pH above 6, they become pink or red. This happens because under acidic conditions, the plant absorbs more aluminum from the soil, giving it the blue color. The sofa problem is a mathematical challenge that seeks to determine the largest possible sofa that can pass through an L-shaped hallway. It is considered still unsolved. The most optimal shape so far describes a sofa with 18 curved sections, achieving an approximate area of 24 square feet, which is close but does not reach the theoretical limit. White truffles, or alba truffles, are the most expensive fungi in the world, costing up to $1,360 per pound. They grow mainly in Italy in symbiosis with tree roots. They are so rare because they only grow in the wild, depending solely on animals for their dispersal. For 300 years in Europe, people attempted to cultivate vanilla to avoid importing it from Asia and Africa, but they were unsuccessful. It was not until 1836 that they realized specific insects were needed, such as a species of bee that only lives in the regions where vanilla naturally grows, making cultivation elsewhere practically impossible. The movie Joker Folie à Deux, the first sequel in actor Joaquin Phoenix's career, became the superhero film with the largest drop in box office revenue between its first and second weekend, with 81.4%, surpassing the record held by the Marvels with 78.1%. It also received a C rating from CinemaScore, the worst ever given to a superhero film. The video game Perfect Dark for Nintendo 64 was going to include a feature that allowed players to put their own faces and their friends' faces into the game, either as enemies or allies, using images from the Game Boy camera. But in the end, due to development difficulties, the feature was discarded. The oldest obsidian bracelet in the world is 9,500 years old. It was discovered in Turkey. An analysis revealed the remarkable craftsmanship of the person who made it, as the quality of its surface, symmetry, and curves can be compared to the precision of modern telescope lens production. The discovery of this object made experts reconsider the technological capabilities of Neolithic societies, which were not as primitive as once believed. There is a ship capable of transporting cargo container ships. It is called the Blue Marlin, measures more than 713 feet, and can carry up to 82,000 tons. It even once transported an entire oil platform. The Abraham Lincoln animatronic was one of the first human figure animatronics created by Disney. It was built in 1963 and exhibited at Disneyland in an attraction. According to anecdotes, its hat frequently fell off, and it experienced what people called robotic madness, where it would begin to strike its chair, and they also say that once it broke and red hydraulic fluid began leaking from it. After a few years, it was replaced with a newer model. A comedian founded the Polish Beer Lovers Party in 1990 as a satire in response to the political changes happening in the country at that time. Surprisingly, in the 1991 elections, they obtained more than 360,000 votes, which earned them 16 of the 460 seats in the Polish parliament. In the first quarter of 2024, the total hours played in the video game Roblox reached more than 177 billion. That is equivalent to more than 1.7 million years of combined playtime in only 3 months. In this same period, they reported revenues of more than $800 million. It is true that someone can pay to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for a cost of $40,000, but they must be nominated by themselves or by someone else, and also go through a validation process to be accepted. A 73-year-old man named Herbert Sukanik received the amount of $17 million to move out of a rent-controlled apartment because developers needed the space to build the luxurious building 15 Central Park West. This payment, made in 2005, is considered the highest ever given to a tenant to relocate in that city. According to research, taking too many photos can harm our ability to retain memories, because it is a distraction that prevents us from remembering information in detail as we normally would. This phenomenon is known as photo-taking impairment effect. They could have chosen a slightly more creative name. The fossil of Boreal pelta is so well preserved that it looks like a sculpture. Discovered accidentally by Canadian miners in 2011, this 110-million-year-old dinosaur still has its skin and soft tissues intact, allowing us to see what it really looked like without scientific speculation to recreate its appearance. There was a time millions of years ago when trees that dried out did not decompose back into the environment because microorganisms that digest wood had not yet evolved. This caused forests to become areas completely covered in layers of wood that often created massive fires. Much of the coal consumed today was formed during that period. During the 1,232 episodes across the 25 seasons in which Ash Ketchum starred in the Pokémon anime, he caught only 57 different Pokémon. If evolutions are counted as new Pokémon, his total was 98, which represents only 12% of the available ones. Not a very good percentage considering his goal was to catch them all. The Bechstein piano, used to record the Beatles song Hey Jude at Trident Studios in London, is considered the most important piano in rock history, as it was also used to record other famous songs like Killer Queen by Queen, Space Oddity by David Bowie, Perfect Day by Lou Reed, and many others. When the studio changed locations, the piano fell from a crane and was destroyed, later being restored and sold for $400,000. Glass is not biodegradable since its main ingredient is sand, which is not biodegradable despite being a naturally occurring material. And not all types of glass can be recycled, such as drinking and cooking glass, which are treated with additional elements to increase their resistance to temperature changes. The first mechanical clocks, including the oldest pocket watches from the 16th century, had only one hand. These single-hand clocks indicated only the hours, similar to sundials. Precision was not as crucial at that time. Old tower clocks also had only one hand. The Amazon River did not always flow toward the Atlantic Ocean. Millions of years ago, this river ran in the opposite direction, emptying into the Pacific, but the uplift of the Andes mountain range caused a dramatic change in its course. Over time, the Amazon reversed its direction. This geological phenomenon greatly impacted the formation of landscapes and ecosystems in South America. Astronaut Chris Hadfield once mentioned that during his stay on the International Space Station, all the astronauts tried to propel themselves using their own gas. Although it was theoretically believed to be possible, in their case it did not work. It did not give them enough thrust. After watching the trailer for the Minecraft movie, fans of the video game pointed out that the blocks making up the film's landscape have many inconsistencies. It does not look like the game, where all blocks are the same size. The designers took the liberty of modifying the dimensions of the blocks to achieve a more cinematic effect, contradicting the design philosophy of the Lego Movie, for example. Here, the creators made a great effort to use only pieces already existing in the brand's catalog. They did not create any special ones for the film. For a long time, one of the requirements to participate in the Olympic Games was not being a professional athlete. But starting in 1988, this rule gradually changed. The most famous case was when NBA players were allowed to participate for the first time in the basketball competition in 1992. It is now allowed for most sports. In the series Gravity Falls, the number 618 appears repeatedly in almost every episode. This number refers to June 18th, which is the birthday of Alex Hirsch, the creator of the series. The team that has participated the most times in the Olympic Games without winning any medals is Monaco, which has competed in 21 games without reaching the podium. In 1924, they won a bronze in architecture. But the International Olympic Committee no longer recognizes medals awarded in art competitions. A tree of the Cycas genus, discovered in Africa at the end of the 19th century, is considered the loneliest organism in the world. This group of plants dominated during the age of the dinosaurs. However, this is the last known specimen of its species. Scientists have unsuccessfully searched for a partner to pollinate it and allow it to exist again in the wild, because the existing trees of this type are clones. The opening ceremony of the Seoul '88 Games was held in the morning to make it easier to broadcast during prime time in the Americas. But the decision was heavily criticized by athletes because the extreme heat may have affected their performance. For this reason, starting in 1996, it was established that ceremonies must be held in the afternoon or at night. In the film The Shining, it is not explicitly mentioned who opened the pantry door when Jack Torrance becomes trapped inside. Opinions were divided between whether he forced the door mechanism himself, whether it was the hotel spirits, or whether there was another secret door. In an interview, director Stanley Kubrick stated that, in his opinion, it was the spirits of the hotel who did it. With an approximate population of 170 million people, Bangladesh is the most populous country that has never won an Olympic medal in the 11 editions in which they have participated so far. The lava eruption seen in the background during the final battle in the film Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith was not computer-generated. It is part of footage of an eruption occurring at Mount Etna in Italy during the days they were filming. Recently, the International Olympic Committee approved the creation of the Olympic Esports Games, which will be held in 2025 in Saudi Arabia. This tournament will be independent and held annually in the same country until 2037. This decision is historic for the video game industry. Pickles have existed for more than 4,000 years. The ancient inhabitants of Mesopotamia were the first to preserve cucumbers in brine, and it is believed that cucumbers reached Mesopotamia from India, which is the second largest consumer of pickles in the world. The first place is China. The first Olympic flag was lost after the Antwerp 1920 Games and remained missing for 77 years, until one day in the year 2000, the medalist Hal Priest, then 103 years old, revealed that he had kept the flag after being dared by his teammates and finally returned it to the committee. The palmaris longus muscle is an example of human evolution in progress. This small muscle in the forearm is absent in approximately 14% of the world's population, without significantly affecting hand function. It's considered an evolutionary vestige from ancestral species that spent much time hanging from trees. Eric Musambani of Equatorial Guinea became the slowest swimmer in Olympic history, famous for his performance in the 100-meter freestyle in Sydney 2000. At first, he wanted to participate in athletics, But when he did not qualify, he was invited to swim, even though he had never been in an Olympic-sized pool before the Games. He finished the race in 1 minute, 52 seconds, more than double the winner's time. But his determination earned him admirers worldwide. Some children have genuine fear of mathematics. This was confirmed when brain scans showed activity in the amygdala, which becomes active when something provokes fear. It was activated when they had to solve a math problem. In the marathon event in Rome 1960, an athlete named Abebe Bikila entered as a substitute after a teammate was injured at the last minute. He ultimately won the gold medal with the unusual peculiarity of running the entire race barefoot, since his only shoes broke during training and he could not find a comfortable pair. Despite Singapore's reputation as a free market country, around 80% of Singaporeans live in apartments built by the government. The Housing and Development Board has built approximately 1 million apartments concentrated in 23 new self-sufficient interconnected towns. This unique approach has made Singapore's public housing program one of the most successful in the world. The Lobster War was a diplomatic dispute between Brazil and France that arose from a debate regarding lobster fishing. Brazil argued that lobsters crawled along the continental shelf, while France claimed that lobsters swim just like other fish. This decision would determine fishing rights along the Brazilian coast. In 1963, both nations even considered a military conflict, but eventually reached an agreement to divide the profits. There's an index called the Good Country Index that measures how much each country contributes to the planet and humanity. In its most recent version, Sweden ranks first, followed by Denmark and Germany. This index evaluates aspects such as science, culture, peace, climate, and well-being, among others. The Latin American country ranked highest is Chile, in place 33. Deserts also experience rainfall, often with significant effects. A record of 1.7 inches of rain was once measured in only 3 hours in the Sahara Desert. This excess water forms channels where water flows rapidly, making it dangerous for people who might be walking nearby. On the YouTube show Hot Ones, where celebrities are interviewed while eating chicken wings with increasingly spicy sauces, only a few guests have given up and not eaten the last wing. Among them are musician DJ Khaled, basketball player Shaquille O'Neal, comedian Ricky Gervais, and rappers Lil Yachty, Chance the Rapper, and recently, Ice Spice. The video game Black Myth: Wukong, developed by an independent Chinese studio and which has sold millions of copies in its first days, is based on the Chinese novel Journey to the West. The popular franchise Dragon Ball is also based on that story as its original inspiration. Among their similarities, for example, both main characters use a magical staff. The leaf grasshopper, besides having the evolutionary trait of looking like a leaf so predators do not notice it, also has ears on its legs. Specifically, it has a structure called a tympanal organ on its limbs that captures vibrations and helps it hear sounds accurately. The Panama Canal was initially planned to be built in Nicaragua, but the plans were abandoned because the route passed near active volcanoes, and there was a shorter path available in Panama. There have been new discussions about building a canal where it was originally planned, but they have not been carried out. The first recorded cat name in history dates back more than 3,400 years in ancient Egypt. The cat was named Nejum, which means sweet or pleasant in ancient Egyptian. This name was found in a tomb in Thebes, demonstrating the affection Egyptians had for their felines. The co-founder of Domino's Pizza, James Monahan, traded his 50% share of the company in 1961 for a used Volkswagen car. His brother kept 97%, which he later sold for $1 billion. In Japan, only beverages containing 100% fruit juice can show a cut fruit on the label. Those with less than 95% juice may show a whole uncut fruit, and those with less than 5% cannot show any fruit on the label. When Samsung gave Galaxy S7 phones to athletes at the Rio Olympic Games in 2016, the government of North Korea confiscated those given to its athletes. It is believed the same happened in Paris 2024 with the Z Flip 6 phones. Sea breeze exists because of temperature differences between land and sea. During the day, the land heats up faster than the water, creating low-pressure zones over land. To restore balance, cooler air from the sea moves toward the land, creating this phenomenon. At night, the opposite effect occurs, known as land breeze. In 1915, a rumor was published in the New York Times claiming that Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison were going to win the Nobel Prize together. But this did not happen because they were not willing to share it. They did not get along at all. Michael Jackson's Super Bowl halftime show in 1993 had higher ratings than the game itself. It is estimated that it had an audience of 133 million viewers in the United States alone, making it one of the most watched events in the country's history. Tiago Resch, a lone fan of the Brazilian team Santa Cruz do Sul, went viral in 2012 when he was photographed as the only fan in the visiting stands during a match. 8 years later, the same photograph was taken again, except now he had become the president of the team and had led the club to win its first trophy in more than 100 years since its founding. Lions used to be the mammal that occupied the largest territory in the world. They lived on every continent, but their dominance ended around 12,000 years ago when humans spread and perfected hunting with tools. The Turk was an automaton machine that played chess, built in 1770. It was demonstrated against notable figures such as Benjamin Franklin and Napoleon, whom it defeated. Although its popularity lasted around 50 years, it was discovered that it was a hoax, since there was a person inside making the moves. It was not a real robot. In ancient times, merchants used to bite coins to verify whether they were really made of gold, since it is a malleable metal and easy to mark. This practice carried over to athletes who win medals. However, they are now only gold-plated and are silver inside, so it has become only a tradition. Photographers always ask athletes to pose that way. In the 1993 satire comedy Cannibal, the Musical, all the Native Americans who appear on screen are actually Japanese actors, and they say Japanese phrases meaning things like, "What the heck are you saying?" or "This movie is very stupid." This was included as a mockery of early Westerns that did not accurately represent cultures. The largest city that cannot be accessed by road is Iquitos in Peru. It is located in the middle of the Amazon and can only be reached by air or river. Despite its isolation, it is not disconnected from the modern world, as it has an international airport and commercial ports, and the preferred means of transportation for locals are motorcycles and moto-taxis. 95% of humans sneeze 4 times a day on average. However, this number can increase due to allergies or depending on the season of the year. And the reason we sneeze more than once in a row is that the body activates a defense mechanism that triggers additional sneezes to completely eliminate irritation in the nasal cavities. The name of the country Venezuela comes from the name of the city of Venice, Italy. When Spanish explorers arrived in the region in 1499, they saw stilt houses on Lake Maracaibo. These homes built over the water reminded them of Venice, so they called the place Little Venice, which evolved into Venezuela. There's a video game in development called Metamorphosis VR, in which you play from the perspective of a salesman who has turned into a cockroach and must regain his humanity. The name and story reference Franz Kafka's novel The Metamorphosis from 1915. The action of swiping to a new video on TikTok burns so few calories that you would have to swipe around 360 times to burn a single calorie. This means that to burn the equivalent of one small apple with approximately 50 calories, you would need to swipe 18,000 times. However, This only accounts for thumb movement and is merely an approximation, as many other factors can influence it. King Harald V of Norway swore he would not marry anyone else if he was not allowed to marry Sonja Haraldsson, the daughter of a fabric merchant. For nearly a decade, he fought against royal opposition to marry her, even threatening to abdicate. Finally, in 1968, he received permission from his father, King Olav V, and they married, and Sonja became the Queen of Norway. In Africa, more people have access to cell phone services than access to drinking water and electricity. Two films fought over having the song Who Let the Dogs Out when it was released. Nickelodeon wanted it for Rugrats in Paris, and Disney wanted it for 102 Dalmatians. But in the end, Nickelodeon won, since they offered to pay for the music video and hold a special live concert with the band Baha Men. The first edition of the DVD for the film, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, was designed to look like a pirated disc with the name of the movie written in marker. This caused many buyers to return the product because they thought they had an illegal copy. The film Borat, which came out earlier, had a similar disc design. The first commercial logo ever registered was the Bass Beer logo in England on January 1st of 1876, right after the trademark law was approved in the United Kingdom. The emblem, which is a simple red triangle, has remained practically unchanged since then, becoming an icon of graphic design. The founder of the Wendy's restaurant, Dave Thomas, was an apprentice of Colonel Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Thomas came up with ideas such as making a commercial with a rotating bucket and having the Colonel appear on television, among other things. Later, he sold his share of the franchises he owned to create what would become Wendy's. Leafcutter ants do not eat the leaves they collect. In reality, they use these leaves to cultivate a specific type of fungus inside their nests. They feed the fungus with the cut leaves and then eat the fungus they grow, acting as an external digestive system for the ants. Although caffeine is not a standardized treatment for ADHD, some studies suggest it could help manage symptoms. In one study with young hyperactive rats, the combination of caffeine and exercise improved behavioral performance and serotonin and dopamine levels. However, effects vary by individual, and more research is required. To demonstrate the power of the Nintendo GameCube console when it was launched, they presented a demo showing 128 Mario Bros. Models rendered in real time doing different activities. It never became a video game, but the technology was used to create the popular game Pikmin. The turtles that appear in the first Rocky movie from 1976 are actor Sylvester Stallone's pets, and they are the same ones that later appeared in Rocky Balboa from 2006 and in Creed II in 2018. In the city of Guiyang in China, there is a highway that passes directly above many apartment buildings. It was completed in 1997, and after years of complaints from residents, heavy trucks were banned from using it, and light trucks were restricted. The longest living tortoise in the world is named Jonathan. He was born in 1832 in Seychelles and holds the record as the oldest living land animal. He lives on St. Helena Island, where the 5-cent coin carries his image on the reverse side. The movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, has slightly more literal titles in different regions of the world. While in Latin America, it is called Eternal Glow of a Mind Without Memories. In Spain, it is Forget Me, and in Italy, it is Se mi lasci ti cancello, which means, if you leave me, I erase you. The river spirit scene in the animated film Spirited Away was directly inspired by an event in the life of director Hayao Miyazaki. While helping clean a river near where he lived, he found a bicycle. But when trying to pull it out, they realized it was trapped under layers of filth and required great effort to free it. In New Zealand, there's a cave that glows in the dark. This peculiar glow comes from a unique species of luminous larvae called Arachnocampa luminosa, which have bioluminescence. They generate light to attract food sources, such as insects. This cave attracts thousands of visitors every year. Actor Matt Damon refused to lend his voice and image to the video game The Bourne Conspiracy, based on the Jason Bourne film saga he starred in, because he wanted it to be more similar to the game Myst, which is about puzzles and solving challenges. Instead, it was developed as a first-person shooter. The demolition of the Eiffel Tower was scheduled for the year 1909, since it was originally intended to be a temporary structure, but it was saved after it was proposed to use it as a radio antenna, which, once modified, could transmit signals to the other side of the world. It was also used for luminous advertising. In Inca mythology, there's a goddess of potatoes. Potatoes were a vital part of the Inca food supply, with many varieties of different flavors and colors. And in each village, they would keep potatoes with particular shapes to worship and ask for good harvests. Stevie Nicks is the only woman who's been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once as a member of Fleetwood Mac and once for her solo career. J.R.R. Tolkien served as a lieutenant during the First World War. He fought in one of the most important battles, and it has been suggested that the horrors of trench warfare shaped his later descriptions of Mordor in The Lord of the Rings. The Statue of Liberty is actually in the act of freeing herself from chains. This can only be observed from the air. Her right foot is stepping forward, and next to it, there is a broken chain. In the Laguna region of Brazil, bottlenose dolphins guide fish toward the local fishermen and then signal with tail slaps for them to throw their nets. The dolphins feed on the fish that escape. These dolphins were not trained for this behavior, and this cooperation between dolphins and fishermen has been occurring since at least 1847. Camels produce a sound that can reach the threshold of pain for a human if heard at close distance. It reaches 120 decibels, equivalent to standing next to the speakers at a rock concert. The texture of aluminum cans that contain food is necessary to allow flexibility during the packaging process and to add structural integrity during transport and storage. It makes them more resistant. Before air conditioning was invented, people used clever techniques to stay cool. For example, houses with high ceilings so heat would rise, shaded porches for socializing on hot nights, and sometimes people even slept on fire escapes. It is said that some people stored their underwear in the freezer as a quick way to cool off. Volcanic ash has been used as an abrasive ingredient for many years in soaps, erasers, polishers, toothpaste, and beauty products, among others. Jupiter's gravity could dramatically alter Mercury's orbit in the distant future. There is even a small probability that this planet could collide with Venus, Earth, or the Sun. However, this would occur billions of years from now. Gravitational interactions can have surprising effects on astronomical timescales. Some crickets build their own megaphones. It was discovered that some small crickets bite leaves and create a pear-shaped hole, positioning themselves in such a way that the sound they make is amplified by the leaf. They do this to help them attract a mate. After conducting analyses, it was confirmed that the meteorites that fell to Earth during a meteor shower in July of 2011 came from Mars. The rocks discovered in Morocco were likely expelled from the surface of the red planet during an ancient asteroid impact. The idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day is actually a myth. It was promoted by cereal companies to sell their products. In reality, it does not matter when breakfast is eaten or what foods are consumed, although it is still a meal that should not be neglected. The Los Angeles 1984 Olympic Games are considered the most profitable ever held. They resulted in a gain of at least $200 million. This was achieved thanks to the use of existing facilities, as well as agreements with sponsors and television broadcasting rights. The vast majority of the games have resulted in financial losses for other countries. Each medal from the Paris 2024 Games contains a piece of steel taken directly from the Eiffel Tower, a small polished steel hexagon embedded in the center of each one. To make room for new popular sports in the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, such as breakdancing, others had to be removed from the competition, such as karate, which was only present in Tokyo 2020, as well as baseball and softball. An Australian rower named Henry Pearce won the gold medal in the 1928 Games, despite stopping in the middle of a qualifying race to wait for a family of ducks crossing the canal so he would not hurt them. In Helsinki 1952, the distance runner from the small country of Luxembourg, Josie Barthel, won the gold medal in the 100-meter event. This was so unexpected that the organizers did not have Luxembourg's national anthem ready, and the band had to improvise something. The United States has never won an Olympic medal in only 4 non-new sports: handball, badminton, trampoline, and table tennis. The Paris 2024 Olympic mascot is based on the traditional Phrygian caps used during the French Revolution, which symbolize freedom. The first time a mascot was used in the Olympic Games was in Mexico 1968, where the image of a pink jaguar was used to identify each event, although it did not really count as an official mascot. The Netherlands Antilles participated as a team in 15 Olympic Games from 1952 to 2008 and earned a silver medal in Seoul '88. After the dissolution of the Netherlands Antilles in 2010, they competed as independent athletes in 2012 and now are part of Aruba or the Netherlands. The first drones, or unmanned aerial vehicles, were created in the 1930s. They were radio-controlled and used to train anti-air defense personnel. Over time, they became more complex, and some countries even modified old or retired airplanes to be controlled remotely. Zombie fires, or persistent fires, are fires that remain burning underground throughout the winter when they were believed to be extinguished, feeding on organic material in the soil, and then reactivating in spring and surfacing. Descending Mount Everest after reaching the summit takes approximately 3 days and can be even more dangerous than the ascent. Some people have descended by paraglider or hovercraft, but that is no longer allowed unless they obtain a special permit. William Wrigley Jr. began by selling soap and offered baking powder as an incentive to buy it. When he discovered that baking powder was more popular, he switched to selling it and gave chewing gum to his customers as an incentive. And the same thing happened. The chewing gum became more popular, so he decided to sell it and soon after founded the Wrigley Company. The Traveling Wilburys was a supergroup formed by musicians Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Jeff Lynne, Roy Orbison, and Tom Petty, who gathered to play almost casually. They recorded their first album in just 10 days, and when they released their second album, they titled it Volume 3 as a joke. They skipped number 2. The reason U2's lead singer Bono says 1, 2, 3, 14 at the beginning of the song Vertigo has been the subject of fan analysis, with theories such as references to a Bible passage, numbers of North Korean bombs, or even mathematical formulas in computer science. When Bono was asked about it, he said it was just improvisation. However, years later, it was discovered that it was likely a tribute to actor John Ritter, who says those numbers in an episode of the series Three's Company while testing a microphone. A Dutch artist named Wim Schippers created an artwork consisting of a floor covered with peanut butter and nothing else. It was exhibited for the first time in 1969 in a gallery. It was later recreated in 1997 and again in 2010 when a museum in Rotterdam bought the piece and the concept as a whole for an approximate price of $100,000. Actress Kristen Stewart collaborated on a scientific publication about artificial intelligence in 2017. The study was based on style transfer techniques used in her short film, Come Swim, since she wanted part of the movie to look like her paintings. As part of a marketing campaign, The label on Heim's bottles was redesigned with a border of the same color as the ketchup inside in order to detect whether the bottle had been refilled with cheaper ketchup from another brand, a practice that is common in many restaurants around the world. In the city of Manitowoc, Wisconsin, United States, Sputnik Fest is held each year to commemorate the day when a piece of the Soviet satellite Sputnik fell on 8th Street in this city on September 5th of 1962. The celebrations include an alien fashion parade and flying saucer throwing. The band Oasis reached such a level of fame, and the problems between its two main members, the Gallagher brothers, became so notorious that in 1995, a record label released a single consisting of an interview in which the brothers argue for more than 10 consecutive minutes. This recording reached number 52 on the United Kingdom charts. Michael Jackson appeared as a playable character in the video game Ready to Rumble Boxing Round 2 for the Sega Dreamcast in 1999. They even sampled his voice and dance movements to integrate them into his fighting style. He also appeared in the dance game Space Channel 5 that same year. Fights in ice hockey, specifically in the National Hockey League, are not explicitly prohibited. When they occur, referees almost never intervene, and the greatest penalty a participant may receive is being sent to the penalty box for 5 minutes. The blue whale has the slowest pulse of all mammals. It has been recorded that its heartbeats can occur at a rate of 1 every 2 minutes while resting. In the series Silicon Valley, when Guilfoyle hacks a refrigerator, the code that appears on the screen contains in one of its lines the YouTube URL of Rick Astley's video, Never Gonna Give You Up. Sending someone to this video when they click a link as a joke is called a Rickroll, and it is a full internet tradition. When experts must handle valuable and delicate works of art and antiques, they do not use white cloth gloves, as is often shown in movies and popular culture. They simply wash their hands beforehand or may use latex gloves. In reality, a white cotton glove is more likely to damage the piece and leave microparticles. A fan of the Turkish second division soccer team Denizlispor, who had been banned from entering the stadium for unspecified reasons, hired a crane to watch the game from outside the stadium since it was an important match he did not want to miss. On September 11th of 2024, the record for the largest number of people orbiting Earth was broken with 19. The previous record was 17. This number includes the people on the International Space Station, those orbiting aboard the Chinese space station, and the Polaris Dawn mission members who were on the Crew Dragon. On D-Day, June 6th of 1944, more than 156,000 soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy, France. This massive military operation transformed the coasts in that area so much that even today, metallic particles continue to be found in the sand, along with buried objects. In less than 1 second, the human nose modifies the humidity level of the air we inhale inside its passages to a relative humidity of 75% and regulates its temperature to 37 degrees. This happens regardless of whether the air is too cold or too hot. Oppositional defiant disorder is a behavioral disorder characterized by patterns of disobedience, hostility, and defiant conduct toward authority figures. It tends to affect boys more than girls, and it's said that the tendency to question established rules can also become a strength if properly guided. There's a region in space over South America and the South Atlantic where Earth's magnetic field is weaker, allowing radiation to get closer to the planet. In this zone, satellites and the International Space Station experience interference and electronic failures. For example, the Hubble telescope cannot send data when passing through it, and it does so 10 times a day. Starting blocks, where runners place their feet in track competitions, include technological advancements such as pressure sensors. These detect a false start, and each block even has its own speaker. In the past, athletes began running at the sound of a starter pistol, but it was demonstrated that this could give an advantage to those closest to the sound source by as much as 8 thousandths of a second, a time that can be decisive in events like the 100-meter dash. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.